welcome to this week's piece. So this is a sweet little nightstand I picked up off of a marketplace for a client. So she commissioned this for her son. She asked for a green lantern end table. So that's what we're going to do. Now the stipulations for this were that she wanted the saying that they do, and also she wanted all of the vintage comic book styles, not anything new. So that when I saw this nightstand, I knew it was perfect because it was vintage looking and I wanted it to suit the comic books that we were going to be using on the piece. So to start, we're starting this piece like we do every other piece with removing the hardware and giving it a good clean. Anything vintage or antique, I will typically label all of the parts because sometimes they're set in their ways and they'll have issues if you put them on not in the same spot that you took them off. Like doors and drawers won't close right, so it's just a good habit to get in to label off all the pieces and make sure that you're putting them back in the exact same spot you took them off. So I'm going to start with a two-tone effect, and the easiest way for me to do that is just to remove the parts that I'm going to keep wood, which are these front faces, so that way I don't have to tape. You guys know I'm not a huge fan of tape, so I just remove those, and I'll remove the legs. And the top I actually had to refinish because it was just too messed up, so obviously that stayed on, but everything that could come off that I was going to leave wood, I just took off because it's just much easier to deal with it that way. And they're just a few screws, so easy peasy. So to refinish the top, I decided just to go the sanding route. I didn't want to deal with strippers, so I started with my 80 grit and moved up from there. This did take quite a bit longer than I wanted to, but sometimes it's just worth it to not have to deal with stripper. Now going around the edges was the biggest pain. Thankfully this wasn't veneer, it was solid maple, so I didn't have to worry about that, which was awesome. But it took a lot of hand sanding, and then, I was so mad at myself. I remembered that Emily, she sent me these scrapers for Breaking 5,000 because she is just one of the kindest people ever and hilarious. So if you guys don't follow her, her channel is called Reconstructing Emily. She is hilarious and incredibly talented, and I adore her. So I pulled out these scrapers, of course, when most of the work was already finished. And of course, they made quick work of the remaining finish that was on these. So I went through with those, cleaned them up, and then sanded out to make them smooth. For the rest of the body, I gave it just a quick scuff sand to help the paint stick, and then cleaned everything up with my Chalk Mountain cleaner. So for the top, I chose to do Chalk Mountain Slow Drying Oil Stain in dark brown. It's very, very incredibly easy to use, and it just so happened to be a very similar color match to the front panels and the legs that I was keeping the natural wood tones. So this worked out well. This stuff doesn't work exactly like a regular stain. It is food safe. You can put this on cutting boards and things like that. So it's not quite like a regular stain in that it is made with actual walnut oil. It nourishes wood. It's super awesome. But you just have to know how to work with it. So you put it on, obviously, very easily. You let it dry overnight and then wipe back the excess. And then you have to give it a few days to actually dry. So now moving on to paint. This is a custom green. I had to match it to the comic book pages that I pulled out, and that was just trial and error. And I felt like you guys maybe didn't need to see that because yours will never be the same as what I'm making. So you guys know how to blend colors. I've put it in a lot of my videos. And then this is just a 2-color blend. So with that green that I mixed up, I literally took just a teeny tiny bit of blackboard and kind of deepened up the green at the bottom parts of the table. So just very easily, super easy finish. I wanted to keep this simple because the inside was going to have all kind of the fun stuff in it. So that's the way that I decided to do this. You can see just a little bit better here how little of the blackboard I'm using. I'm just putting the tiniest amount on the end of the brush to where it doesn't actually look black on the piece. It just deepens up the green to add just a little something so it's not so boring. Bleh. You know what I mean. All right, these are the comic book covers I decided to use for this. I just searched them up on the internet, found a few that I liked, and printed them out. So I will link the video below, but it is the one that I have already showed you guys, the newsprint paper that I use, and I just print everything out and make my own papers that way. I find I can be so much more custom doing things that way, and then I don't have to wait for me to order something online and then have it shipped to me. So I'm impatient. So, like I said, I'll link that video below so you can see how this is done. But to apply these, it's super easy. This paper is much thicker than tissue paper, also much thinner than regular paper, so it works out really well. I just do one strip of poly at the top, and then I'll do a heavy amount all down the bottom, and then lay it on. So because this is thicker paper, I can rework it without fear of it ripping. Now, that's not to say that it won't ever rip. It just is thicker and a little bit more mobile than tissue paper is. So I just kind of get a rough cut on there. I don't need it to be perfect because you guys know once it dries, I'll just go through with a razor blade and fix it. So I'm adding, before it's all the way dry, another coat to the top. And then I add just a little bit to the bottom if I felt like it wasn't enough. And then I literally am using the brush to smooth out all of the wrinkles. Because as soon as you get paper wet, it kind of shrinks up and does that weird thing. So if you can keep all of the paper that's on it kind of wet with the poly and get rid of any of the dry paper, it will all kind of shrink up and do the same thing instead of trying to fight wet paper and dry paper all at the same time. I hope that makes sense. So that's why you saw me cut off a little extra paper, because I wanted to make sure I was working with all dry paper so the dry wasn't staying tight and the wet wasn't trying to do its own thing. And then you just add it, and like I said, use the brush to kind of smooth everything out. And then you know that once it starts drying, it will actually smooth out as well. So don't be afraid to work this. Pick it up, lay it back down if you're having any issues. But also just know that as it dries, it will release a lot of the wrinkles there as well. And then I just let that dry overnight and went through with my really sharp blade. It is so important to have a sharp blade or you'll just be sad. I went through with my sharp blade and cut off all the excess and made sure that it was all perfectly smooth. You can cut at a slight angle, a 45, to make sure that there is no catching or lip sticking up that could potentially lift later on. To seal this piece, I'm just going in with the Chalk Mountain Emerald Wax. I just wanted to richen up the colors, and this wax is awesome for sealing. The top of the table is going to get quite a bit more use, so I'm actually going to seal that in poly. But the base is going to be just fine in wax, and I'm not worried about that. Now, once that's absorbed in, you can go back with a cloth and just wipe off any of the excess. Now we're getting to the fun part. So I have the scrap piece of wood in my shop. This is what I'm going to use for the false wall in the back of the end table. I wanted to have like a little hidden compartment back there. I just thought it would have been a fun thing, kind of something to geek out on, because I really like hidden compartments. So whenever I use a circular saw, I always use a straight edge because I am not great at making a straight cut with just my hands. So I just clamp down whatever straight edge I'm using. And what you want to do here is make sure that where you need the wood to cut, you have to measure over on your blade where the blade is going to cut into the wood and where the edge is on your circular saw, so that you're cutting in the right spot on your wood. So this is just trial and error when you're first starting out, but it's incredibly useful to know as you go. So I line up the straight edge to where I need it, to where the blade will cut in exactly where I need it to, and get everything situated before I ever attempt to cut anything. I just want to make sure that it's right the first time. So if you're nervous about using these, I mean, I think being nervous is actually kind of a good thing because they are incredibly dangerous. But don't be so fearful that you won't give it a try, because once you get the hang of it, they're very easy to use. This one's very compact. It's not too large. It does everything that I need it to do. And I feel like I'm so much better for learning how to use it. So again, I'm clamping the board down. I had to clamp it this way because it kept trying to move, so I'm just making sure my board is extra secure. It's safe to cut along, and then I do the exact same process, putting down the straight edge, making sure I measure out where the blade is going to go in at, lining it up, clamping everything down, and then cutting. Again, it just takes practice, but it's super easy once you get the hang of it. And once I get that cut to size, it is nearly a perfect fit inside the cabinet. It does need to be so if it's going to look like a false back. You don't want it to look like it's fake, obviously. So I am going to have to go in with my router. I'm just going to use a round over bit, and you have to round over the top back and then the bottom front so that the board can freely drop down to get into the back. Because it's such a tight fit, it has to have that curve there so it misses the lip when you pull it down. And that's all that I'm doing here. And now the top of the stain, like I said, it's a walnut oil based stain. You can go over it with poly, however, you do have to make sure that it is thoroughly wiped back after applying, and then also I let it sit for 3 days before I try applying poly to it. This is self-sealing stain. The only reason I'm adding poly is because it's the top of an end table and I know that it's going to get a lot of use. So I just wanted to make sure I added that extra bit of protection. We're obviously jumping ahead a bit because I've painted this board in decoupage paper on it, but here we go. So I found these barrel hinges. I was looking for any hinge that was invisible. So there's the huge cabinet hinges that are very common. But these barrel hinges are incredibly easy to install. You just have to make sure you have the right size bit, and you drill in the holes and they fit right inside. You do have to make sure that you are drilling them straight down. You don't want any angles to them at all. So you just have to be careful in that regard. But the barrel hinges kind of lift up and pop out, and they are completely invisible, and they are so fun to use. So I definitely want to do something else with these. You do want a snug fit with these, so you do have to make sure, again, that the bit is the right size for the hinges. I'm taking a rubber mallet to hit them in gently. I know it's a mallet, but I'm hitting them in very gently. I actually end up removing these again. There is also a teeny tiny screw on the inside of them that you can screw in to expand them out that will help them sit tighter in the holes. So now that I have those in there, I am actually opening them up on the back side of that and making marks so that I can drill in the exact spots that I need these to go into. So that's what I'm doing here, is just pressing them down and making a mark with them so that I can drill exactly where they need to be. And then of course I'll just grab my drill and go in and drill the holes. I can't say this enough. Make sure your drill is going straight down and you're not having any angles in your hole. It will not, it could potentially still work, but it's unlikely. So just try your best, straight up and down, no angles. And then I tried just putting this in because you can drop the hinges down and put them in that way. And I was just having a time with it. And then I realized I can just take the backboard off and make my life about 1,000,000,000 times easier. So that's what I ended up doing because I was trying to get them in. I couldn't get them exactly at the right angle to be able to have them go down in the holes because you obviously can't hammer from the top because the board is too high because it fits perfectly in there. So it was just an ordeal. So skip this part if you're doing this yourself and take off the back where it's closer and easier to see. So now we've hopped off the struggle bus, removed the back, and we can actually start making this happen. So it was much easier to put the hinges in on the bottom, slide the board in, and then pull it back towards the open hinges, which I highly recommend. So that's the way that I did it, and it worked out rather nicely that way. So once I figured out that that was going to work, I could then hammer them in to the depth they needed to go. They do have to be completely flush if you want them to be hidden, obviously. So I'm just making sure they are down as far as they need to go, and then I can work on getting the top in. And again, it just pulls back, and I actually had them a little bit looser because they've already been in and out a few times, me trying to get everything working. So it just took a little bit of finagling, but still way easier than the other way. And then I just made sure that it was working right. So I'd move it up and down quite a few times just to see how it was going to fit and how it was going to drop down and make sure it was good to go. Now off camera, I installed one of these magnetic latches. They just have instructions included in the box. And then I took one of these rings. I just ordered these off of Amazon. They're just ring blanks. And I drilled a hole through the center so that it was big enough to fit a screw. So whatever size screw you're using, you obviously use a drill bit that size so that you can drill right through. This was a pain in the butt, but it worked out and it's fine. So I just lined it up. I did it in the upper right hand corner so that it was kind of out of sight, but still convenient enough to grab and work. And now we can just reattach all the hardware. Of course, it's super easy because I have them all labeled and they will go in the exact right spots. The backer board I just reattached with my staple gun because it was closer than my airstrike, but it worked well, so no issues there.
Oh hi, Taryn here with Elegant Upgrades, and we've got another finished piece. So this one was exciting because it was actually a commissioned Christmas present. So I wouldn't typically have done a Green Lantern. Of course, I've done the Captain America dresser for my son because he thinks he's Captain America, so obviously he needed that dresser. But this one is for a client. So I got this one all finished, and I wanted to try some new stuff, so we've got the regular. I wanted it to be kind of subdued on the outside so that it would just kind of sit in their home and not be too crazy, but then when they open it up, hopefully it would bring joy and everything like that. And then of course, we put in this false wall here so that there was a secret compartment. And I love, love, love secret compartments and things. And so this was my first time adding one in and I feel like I got it deep enough to where it doesn't look too fake, like, you know, there's enough space in here to not really know that this exists. And the thing behind this is because Green Lantern has the ring, so I used a ring as the pole. It's small enough that it looks a little bit hidden, but still kind of, it's just supposed to be for fun. So I have the magnet hidden all the way in the back. That's what opens it, undoes the latch, and then you can pull forward at the key. And then conveniently, these little hinges actually block the door from going all the way down. So it's perfect. I'm very excited about it. I hope that her son loves it, because I think it's super cool. And look, now it's just regular. I did keep the vintage hardware and style of it because they wanted the vintage style comic book, and I just thought it was kind of like a fun play off of the older styles. So anyways, I hope you learned some stuff from this. I certainly did. I learned a ton in doing that hidden wall thing going on. So I'm excited to do more if I can, you know, find a piece that it would suit it. That's exciting for me. You guys know I really like to build things. And I hope you had a Merry Christmas. This was actually filmed before Christmas, but obviously I couldn't post it till after. And we are getting ready to go to Disneyland, which I've never gone in my many, many years on this planet. But Lucas, who's sitting right over there, has not been, but he's only 3. So he'll get to go his first time when he's 3. So by the time we get back, you guys are watching this, and I will have gone to Disneyland for the first time along with Lucas, and we will have had a Merry Christmas. So I hope you guys had just the best holiday season. You know that I just think you guys are wonderful and amazing and incredible and all the things. So I will see you next week. We're going to Disney. Well, I just told him we're going to Disney. You want to say Merry Christmas? I already said Merry Christmas. You said you wanted to be in the voiceover. You don't want to? Are you feeling shy?
I want to be in a last voiceover. Is that okay?
Yeah, what would you like to? Do you want to say anything?
Last voiceover.
You're so silly.
Why voiceover?
Why a voiceover? Alright, got it.